Hey, what's up, folks? I got a banger for you guys right here. And this video is basically, we're going to talk about California's high income tax and California going to shit with homeless all over the state. And basically, California's going through a transition. And yeah, we're going to look at what Reagan was dealing with in the 1975. Very similar situation. Let's roll into this rabbit hole. First clip, let's jump into this. President Trump warned Gavin Newsom to his face 7 years ago. Not only has LA had to deal with the fires, but on top of that, the homeless population has exploded. And people still have high income taxes. High taxes. So people, the population is struggling. Let's jump into this.
Monroe, down here near SeaWorld Drive under the I-5 freeway in San Diego. Yesterday, I issued a challenge to you, Gavin Newsom, to come and meet me down here and do some real homeless work. And I can clearly see why you wouldn't want to meet me down here. Got some public safety going on here. I don't know what the plan is to clean up all of this trash and all of the drugs and all these homeless people, but we're looking forward to your solution since it's you that created this giant mess in the first place.
It enrages me seeing them ask for money for the wildfires or anything else. When you see these people asking for fucking money from regular poor people to assist with the wildfires, or like they did when this happened in Maui, it's so enraging because they've already given money. These motherfuckers, the powers that be, the corporations, the fucking ruling class, they are constantly asking you for more money when you already pay a lot, okay? You've already paid the taxes. You already paid the taxes that should have paid for the firefighters to help put these fires out, to help people with it. People in California pay higher taxes than most people in the fucking country. Also, stop getting hung up on partisan bullshit. Is it climate change? Is it bad management? It's both. It's both. Stop getting fucking hung up on this red-blue bullshit that loser politicians and partisans want you to focus on instead of actually looking at what the issue is, which is many things at once, including climate change and bad management. So you're already paying a ton of taxes to the state. Ask yourself this, and people really should start demanding a list of what their taxes are going to exactly. Like, people should start asking for a fucking breakdown when they do their taxes, okay? There should be a fucking law where you have to say where it's going, because then you'll really look at it, it'll just say, the Israeli regime. Because this is ridiculous. Because Californians are paying a ton in taxes just so that they can turn around and go, hey, we've got nothing for you. Sorry your house got destroyed. Sorry you don't have anywhere to stay. Sorry you have no food to eat. Let's put a QR code on the screen and ask some fucking random poor in another part of the country to give money. This is the actual fucking looting that's happening, okay? The actual looting that's happening is you paying taxes on the front end, and then when they blow everything up and destroy everything because they didn't use your taxes for the things they should have been using it for, they turn around and they ask you and the public for more money to fix what your taxes should have already paid for. This is just the latest example of the breakdown of the social contract. They, for years and years, have been seeing how much they could get away with, how much they could erode your rights, how much they could take away from you, how far they could push you, making you work longer hours for less pay, making it so that you can't afford a house, making it so you can't afford to send your kids to college, pushing them grocery prices up, not because of inflation, but because they fucking could. Privatizing more and more of the social programs that everyday people rely on to see how much they could get away with. And they keep doing it. They keep saying, how much more can we take from you? They have broken the social contract. They're the ones who have destroyed it. And they continue to push further and further and further, being like, they'll do it. What are they going to do? What are you going to do? Also, the uselessness of sitting around trying to argue whether or not climate change contributed to this, which obvious fuckingly it did. Climate change is like hell. It exists whether you believe in it or not. And it's coming for some of you, whether you speak its name or not. And by the way, don't be falling for bullshit like this, okay? All of this is just PR. It is just fucking PR. These people refuse to pay their fucking taxes, but then they want to parade because they're
It only gets worse. So, as California is supposed to put away billions of dollars for funding, for housing, for the homeless and the needy, California is supposed to be buying millions of these tiny homes. Basically, they're the Home Depot sheds you see outside Home Depot. Well, this guy right here explains it better than I can. But California has been wasting millions of dollars overpaying on these tiny sheds, basically. Let this guy explain it. He can explain it better than I can.
I'm pretty sure I just found the most wasteful spending in the history of California. And look, I know that's a high bar, but I feel pretty confident in what I just said. Oh, and by the way, TikTok, I'm parked. This is not a dangerous activity. But anyway, so back to California. So do y'all know those tiny homes that you get off like Amazon or Lowe's or Home Depot for like $2,500? You know, they're basically like little barns, but you can actually live in them. Well, the California government is buying a lot of them. And they're buying a lot of them in an effort to house the homeless, which I gotta say is fucking awesome. I fully support that. However, instead of paying about $2,500 per house or even less because they're buying a ton of them in bulk, the California taxpayer is paying more than $837,000 per tiny home. They are paying $834,000 more than you can order them off Amazon per home. For that much money, you should be able to buy 335 tiny homes. Even if you weren't buying them in bulk, if you just went to the website and ordered one at a time, you could get 335 of these tiny homes for the same price that the California government is paying for one. Think about it this way, California. It is estimated that you have about 160,000 homeless people. And over the last 4 years, your government claims you have spent $17 billion trying to house them. You understand that if you had bought every single one of those 160,000 people a tiny home, not just once, but you bought them one every year for the last 5 years, like they got a brand new tiny home every single year, you still would have only spent about $2.5 billion. You would have spent nearly $15 billion less by just buying them a new tiny home every year. But no, you're spending $837,000 for something I can go to Amazon and get for $2,500. You are spending 330 times what the average American can get that tiny home for. How are you allowing this level of government corruption and thievery to just keep going on? How are you not demanding to know where that extra $834,000 per home is going? This is why your state 4 years ago had a surplus, one of the biggest surpluses in California history. As of this year, you have a $73 billion deficit. California, please stop worrying about the presidential race. Please stop worrying about who's president. That shouldn't matter to you. Pay attention to your local government that is very obviously fucking you. And go ask your governor why you're paying $837,000 for a tiny home that you can buy online for $2,500. Or don't. I legitimately don't give a shit because I would never fucking live in your state. It's sad because California is fucking beautiful, but your government sucks.
Not only has LA had to deal with the fires, but on top of that, the homeless population has exploded. And people still have high income taxes, high taxes. So people, the population is struggling. Let's jump into this.
Demolished Southwest Florida. Immediately after the hurricane, everybody on the news was saying to rebuild the Sanibel Causeway, which is about 4 miles, was going to take 3 years. That's what everybody was saying. DeSantis basically had it rebuilt in a month because he brought all the best contractors down. He took everybody to the bridge and basically said, what do we need to do? We gave him our recommendations and he started making it happen the next day. That's proper, competent governance. We're just so not used to that. We're used to what you fled in California, an ever-growing state that taxes endlessly and punishes people for success. And then it's like, how is it that I have nice clean roads in Florida? How is it that we don't have homeless people? Why do things work with no income tax in Florida? And why does Cali tax tax the high hell out of you and have much worse services and much worse infrastructure and a whole series of other problems. So the government shouldn't do much. Everything should be dealt with at the state and local level, and then the federal government should have a couple things that they're supposed to do. So that would be border, make sure the states aren't warring with each other, interstate commerce, foreign policy. I would say the founders basically got it completely right.
Our taxes are too high in California, way too high in California. But since we have Trump back in office, something is very similar to when we had Reagan in office. And I want to pull this back. We're going to go back into 1975 and just check this out. See how California has, I think it's going through a process because we're having the same issues that they did in the 70s today. Check out this.
When you and I were boys back in the Midwest,
Right.
governments, federal, state, and local, were only taking about 15 cents out of every dollar earned. Today, they're taking almost half of every dollar earned in the United States. And most people don't realize it because the taxes are hidden in the so-called business taxes. The politician that stands up and yells, "Oh, let's save the little man, let's tax business," and everybody yells, "Hooray." But they haven't figured out that every tax on business is just a part of the cost of production. And the customer winds up paying it when he buys the product. It's a hidden sales tax. There's 116 of them in the suit of clothes that each one of us is
that right?
wearing.
Suppose a lot of economists have suggested, and I don't know that it'll ever come to be in this country, that if they closed all of the loopholes and corporations and maybe tax loopholes and even on the rich certain loopholes and made a percentage income and made a flat fee without all of the deductions, that the government might raise as much money as they do now.
Oh, sure. And really, the loopholes, this has been overdone by the politicians, too.
No.
The bulk of the money that is taken by what are called loopholes are the legitimate deductions with which, if the people didn't have them, they couldn't pay their income tax. Interest on their mortgage, interest on the installments on their car, their property taxes on their home, if they have one, and so forth. These are, in politicians' eyes, loopholes. But we ought to have tax reform, and we ought to start by making it so simple that you don't have to hire a lawyer to find out how much you owe every year.
That's for sure. It used to be a little simplified, but not anymore.
Johnny, we live in the only country in the world where it takes more brains to figure out your income tax than it does to earn the income.
Maybe you're right.
We've gotten in the habit over the last 40 years of thinking the government has the answers. There's very little that government can do as efficiently and as economically as the people can do themselves. And if government would shut the doors and sneak away for about 3 weeks, we'd never miss them. Our biggest problem is that we have built a permanent structure of government, federal, state, and local. The permanent employees, and they've come to the place that they actually determine policy in this country more than does the Congress of the United States. Mm-hmm. There are 14.5 million public employees in the United States. That's quite a voting bloc. And the bureaus and agencies, now in Washington, I heard you talking earlier about some of the research programs. Mm-hmm. What would you say if I told you about a study in which this was called the demography of happiness? And in this study, the government found out that young people are happier than old people. And they found out that people that earn more are happier than people that earn less. And they found out that well people are happier than sick people.
That's good. Well, that's
now,
glad
this
to
was
know that.
$249,000 to find out it's better to be rich, young, and healthy than old, poor, and sick. A poll was taken recently that found out that only 46% of the people in the poll could name their United States congressman. But what was worse, 86% of those who could name him couldn't tell you a single thing that he represented or stood for.
They just knew that he represented the
Yeah,
state. But
he was a congressman, but what's he doing while he's up there? And the same is true at the local levels of government and all the rest. But
so you're saying people really have to take an active interest, and you have to have citizen action groups locally and
let them know. See, the special interest
center.
groups. Now, the special interest groups aren't, as everyone thought, big, powerful business interests or something that are going to persuade government to do things. As a matter of fact, I don't know anyone with less influence today in government than business. They're just a convenient whipping boy. But it's the groups that have got a particular axe to grind. You can't have a power plant because it might interfere with the seagulls. Now, I think I'm an environmentalist. And I do not agree with those people way over on the edge who pave the whole country over in the name of progress. But also, I don't like those on the other extreme that won't let you build a house unless it looks like a bird's nest. Someplace in the middle, we got to allow people our ecology too.
Right.
Well, this kind of group, and they want their particular program. Hundreds of dollars have been added to the cost of an automobile, putting gadgets on it to clear up the air. We're the only country in the world that's set out to do it that way. When budget deficits are what's causing inflation, I don't see that there's any room to be on either side of that argument.
Yeah,
I think the answer to curing inflation is a balanced budget.
Now, how do you do that? I mean, how do you balance the budget?
Well, balancing the budget is like protecting
You don't
your
spend more than you take in, right?
Yeah, it's like protecting your virtue. You have to learn to say no.
There's got to be another way. What's the second option?
Well, no, there's some ways that this could be brought about. First of all, that limitation. Here's another one. Why shouldn't we have, in addition to a simplified income tax, why shouldn't we also have a law that says that any time a legislator or a congressman introduces a spending program, he has to introduce with it a tax program to pay for it? Then let the people find out. There was a woman that, from a financial firm that was back at the President's Economic Council, and her words weren't quoted. Everybody else's words got in the paper, all the Hellers and the Galbraiths and all the so-called economists. And I have a degree in economics, so I can say this. I think an economist is someone who has a Phi Beta Kappa key on one end of his watch chain and no watch on the other. This woman said that you go to the polls and you ask the people, do they want some social service, some program that government can give? And the people in the polls are apt to read and say, hey, that sounds good, yeah. Mm-hmm. But she says that isn't exactly accurate. She says put a $100 bill in each person's hand and then show them the program and say, now, isn't that a nice program? Do you want it? Give me the $100. And she says, see what the poll says then, and how many people hang on to the $100 instead of the program.
In other words, if it's rather hidden and someone doesn't know exactly where it's going to come
they
from.
All the government programs start $1 down and we'll catch you later. And they multiply all of those things that you were... The Office of Management and Budget in Washington, that's responsible for the budget, putting the budget together, cannot even tell you how many boards, commissions, agencies, bureaus, and departments there are in the federal government. Yeah. But all of them can pass regulations. And those regulations have the force of law. And the difference is, when you break the law, you're innocent until proven guilty. When you break a regulation, the fellow that charges you with breaking the regulation, you're guilty. Right. And if you want to take him to court and prove you're innocent, that's up to you. Right. And all of these are things that yes, we can trim the budget. There's enough fat in the federal government that if you rendered it, you could wash the world. Maybe it's time for realignment between people who might find themselves in the wrong parties. Mm-hmm. Maybe there are some people still voting. I was a Democrat most of my life. I became a Republican only not too many years ago. And I had the pleasure of telling some of those people that are saying the Republican Party ought to broaden its base the other day that when I switched parties, I didn't do it because the two parties were alike. I did it because they were different. Right. And I think that the two parties ought to stand up as to what they represent, what they...
So yeah, California has basically the highest taxes in the country. Literally. People are paying up the ass, and as you see in LA, you can't even get a fireman there and there's no water. So why are you paying all these high taxes? Where's the money going? Let's check
all
this
the
out.
bad places I've been to in the United States, I don't know if I've ever been to a city that's as vastly run down, abandoned, and out of control as Oakland, California. This is the side of town where most of the homeless camps are located. Some look like something you'd see in Haiti. Lean-to shacks made of recovered junk that serve as 4 walls and a roof, but that's just about it. Other areas just outside of downtown are home to hundreds of people camped out in makeshift shanties among piles of trash with rats. Parts of West Oakland don't even look like the
We
United.
have the highest taxes in the country and the lowest standard of government performance. When it comes to just the basic things like managing our forests or storing our water or building our roads. And, you know, you mentioned at the outset that Newsom is trying to blame in every which direction. He's even put up a whole website devoted to trying to blame other people. He's called for some farcical investigation. And the reason he's doing this is because he knows that his incompetence now is on full display for the entire country in this tragic and shocking way.
And he wants to be the president in 4 years or in three years. I mean, which is
Well,
going to come up really quick. He can't leave the Palisades and Malibu looking like a bomb hit them for the next 3 years, because so many people that PCH drive, it's going to be a reminder of his incompetence. So he's talking about now he wants to cut all this red tape and make sure that we can clean this up and rebuild this as fast as possible. It's purely for political motivations, in my estimation. But which it just proves, though, that all of the red tape that exists in your state that makes homeowners so miserable, that makes taxes so high, is really just all nonsensical. And if Gavin Newsom needs to win an election, they're more than happy with throwing them away.
That's right. I mean, the environmental regulations are absolutely crazy. We have regulations that stop us from clearing out trees around power lines. You have regulations that stop us from building new water storage. And the true irony of it, by the way, is that all of this is done in the name of the environment, as are these crazy things like trying to ban lawnmowers and, and EVs and everything else. But when you have a fire like this, it absolutely destroys the environment. It's way worse than anything you save from all of these regulations. And so the policy could not be more backwards. And I think that to your point about Newsom wanting to run for president, as he did want to run this last year, even, he likes to say California is a model for the nation. I think that what people are seeing is that it is precisely the opposite.
Oh, it's terrifying. It's such a wonderful place with such bad leadership. Except for you, my friend, Kevin Kiley from the state of California. Congressman, good to see you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'll take it.
California government does suck. Newsom is trash. But check out how fast Florida was able to fix their situation when they had a minor disaster. Check this out.